In the vast, unforgiving expanse of Yakutia, where the earth itself seems frozen in eternal protest against the sun, lived a woman named Olga Petrovna. At 90 years old, her body was a map of wrinkles etched by decades of relentless cold, her hands calloused from wrangling reindeer and sheep across tundra that could swallow a man whole. Yakutia, the coldest inhabited place on Earth, was her home, a land where temperatures plummeted to -71°C, turning breath into ice crystals and blood into sluggish rivers. Olga had outlived 2 husbands, 3 children, and countless blizzards that would have claimed lesser souls. Her companions now were her flock of snow sheep, hardy creatures with thick wool that insulated them against the Arctic fury, grazing on the sparse lichen that poked through the permafrost. These sheep were not just livestock, they were her legacy, her sustenance, her reason to rise each dawn when the world outside her modest izba, a wooden cabin insulated with moss and felt, howled with wind that sounded like the cries of ancient spirits. Olga's days followed a rhythm as predictable as the aurora borealis dancing across the night sky. She would wake before the faint light pierced the horizon, stoke the iron stove with dried dung and wood scavenged from the taiga, and brew a pot of strong tea laced with herbs foraged in the brief summer months. Her sheep, numbering around 100, were herded into a corral adjacent to the cabin, protected by a fence of sharpened logs designed to deter predators. But in Yakutia, predators were as inevitable as the frost. Wolves roamed the wilderness in packs, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark, driven by hunger that knew no mercy. Olga had faced them before, small skirmishes where a single wolf or a pair would test the boundaries, only to be chased off by her shotgun blasts or the fierce barking of her loyal dog, Buran, a massive Yakutian Laika with fur as white as the snow. That fateful winter, the cold descended with a vengeance unmatched in Olga's long memory. The thermometer outside her window dipped to -71 degrees, a temperature where metal became brittle, rubber shattered, and exposed skin froze in minutes. The sky was a perpetual gray shroud, dumping snow in sheets that buried everything in white silence. Olga's sheep huddled together for warmth, their breaths forming a collective fog that hung over the corral like a protective veil. She knew the signs of trouble, the distant howls that echoed across the frozen Lena River, growing closer with each passing night. Wolves were migrating south from the even harsher northern tundras, their usual prey scarce due to an unusually severe freeze that had locked the ground in impenetrable ice. Rumors from the nearest village, 50 kilometers away, spoke of packs swelling in numbers, desperate and bold. One evening, as the sun barely crested before sinking again, Olga stepped out to check on her flock. The air bit into her lungs like shards of glass, and she pulled her malitsa, a traditional fur coat made from reindeer hide, tighter around her frail frame. Buran growled low, his hackles raised, staring into the swirling snow beyond the fence. Olga's sharp eyes, undimmed by age, spotted shadows moving in the distance, dark forms against the white, multiplying like phantoms. Wolves. Not a dozen, not a score, but hundreds, perhaps 1,000, converging from all directions. It was as if the entire wolf population of the taiga had united in a singular, ravenous horde, drawn by the scent of her sheep carried on the wind. Panic flickered in her chest, but Olga stamped it down. She had survived famines, wars, and the Stalinist purges, she would not yield to beasts. Rushing back inside, Olga grabbed her ancient Mosin Nagant rifle, a relic from her first husband's days in the Red Army, and loaded it with the few cartridges she had left. She slung a bandolier over her shoulder, filled with more ammo, and donned her ushanka hat, its earflaps tied firmly under her chin. Buran paced at her feet, sensing the impending storm. The wolves' howls grew louder, a chorus of hunger that vibrated through the cabin walls. Olga knew she couldn't fight them all head-on. 1,000 wolves would overwhelm any human, no matter how armed. But her sheep were trapped in the corral, easy prey if the pack breached the fence. She had to act, to turn the tide in her favor using the wits that had kept her alive for 9 decades. As the first wolves approached, their yellow eyes piercing the blizzard, Olga burst from the cabin, firing a shot into the air. The crack echoed like thunder, momentarily halting the advance. Buran charged forward, barking ferociously, nipping at the heels of the lead wolves that dared venture too close. The pack circled, testing, probing for weakness. Olga herded her sheep tighter together, using a long staff to guide them while keeping her rifle ready. The temperature was plummeting further, the cold sapping strength from both predator and prey. She realized the wolves were not just attacking, they were strategizing, some flanking left, others right, a few bold ones leaping at the fence only to be repelled by the sharpened stakes. Night fell like a curtain, the darkness absolute save for the moon's pale glow filtering through the storm. Olga lit torches she had prepared from rags soaked in animal fat, planting them around the corral to create a ring of firelight. The flames danced wildly in the wind, casting flickering shadows that made the wolves appear even more monstrous. One large alpha male, his fur scarred from past battles, lunged over the fence, landing inside the corral. The sheep bleated in terror, stampeding in circles. Olga aimed and fired, the bullet striking true, felling the beast with a yelp that silenced the pack for a moment. But it was a Pyrrhic victory. More wolves poured in, tearing at the fence with their jaws, splintering wood in their frenzy. Buren fought valiantly, tackling a wolf midair and rolling in the snow, their snarls mingling in a deadly duet. Olga reloaded, her fingers numb despite her mittens, and shot another intruder. Blood stained the snow crimson, a stark contrast to the white void. She knew she couldn't hold them forever, ammunition was finite, and her body, though tough, was old. Pain shot through her joints with each movement, the cold seeping into her bones like poison. Yet, surrender was not in her nature. Memories flooded her. As a child, surviving the Lena River flood, as a young woman, enduring labor in the gulags, as a mother, burying her infants in frozen ground. Each hardship had forged her into steel. The pack's numbers seemed endless, waves upon waves crashing against her defenses. Olga retreated to the cabin momentarily, barricading the door with furniture, but she couldn't abandon her sheep. She emerged again, this time with a plan born of desperation. In her storage shed, she had barrels of fish oil, used for lamps and sealing hides. Dragging one out with Buren's help, the dog pulling on a rope while she pushed, she poured the oil in a wide arc around the corral. The wolves hesitated at the unfamiliar scent, but hunger drove them forward. Olga ignited the oil with a torch, and a wall of flame erupted, encircling the area in a blazing barrier. The heat was a brief reprieve from the cold, but the fire roared, singeing fur and forcing the pack back. Howls of frustration filled the air as wolves paced outside the flames, their eyes reflecting the inferno. Some attempted to jump through, only to catch fire and roll in the snow, yelping in agony. Olga used the respite to reinforce the fence, hammering loose logs with a mallet, her breaths coming in ragged gasps. Buren, bloodied but unbowed, guarded the sheep, his presence calming them somewhat. Hours passed in this standoff, the fire consuming the oil slowly, the blizzard raging on. The temperature held at -71, turning the scene into a hellish paradox of fire and ice. As the flames began to dwindle, Olga knew the endgame was near. The wolves, undeterred, regrouped, their pack mentality turning them into a coordinated army. The new alpha, a sleek female with cunning in her gaze, led a charge from multiple sides. Olga fired her last shots, dropping several, but the rifle clicked empty. She grabbed her staff, wielding it like a spear, jabbing at snapping jaws. One wolf latched onto her leg, teeth piercing through the fur boots, but she bashed its skull with the staff's end, freeing herself. Blood soaked her pants, the wound burning in the cold, but adrenaline numbed the pain. Buren was surrounded, fighting off 3 wolves at once, his white fur matted with red. Olga screamed a Yakut battle cry, an ancient chant her grandmother had taught her, invoking the spirits of the land for strength. The sheep, sensing the chaos, pressed against each other, their wool a living fortress. In a moment of inspiration, Olga remembered the old ways, the stories of her ancestors using sound to repel beasts. She rushed back to the cabin, grabbing a metal pot and spoon, and began banging them together, creating a cacophony that echoed across the tundra. Joined with her shouts and Buren's barks, the noise disoriented the wolves, who were accustomed to silent hunts. The pack faltered, some retreating into the storm, others milling in confusion. But the alpha female pressed on, leaping onto the corral and facing Olga directly. Their eyes locked, human determination against primal instinct. Olga swung her staff, connecting with the wolf's side, sending it tumbling. Buren pounced, finishing the fight with a savage bite. Leaderless, the pack's unity fractured. Wolves began to turn on each other, fighting over the fallen, their hunger turning inward. Dawn broke, a faint pink hue on the horizon, as the last wolves slunk away into the blizzard, defeated by the old woman's tenacity. Olga collapsed against the fence, her body spent, the cold threatening to claim her now that the adrenaline faded. Buren licked her face, whining softly. She counted her sheep, all accounted for, though some bore scratches from the fray. The corral was in ruins, the fire reduced to embers, but they had survived. Villagers arrived days later, drawn by the smoke's remnants visible from afar. They found Olga alive, tending her wound with herbal poultices, her sheep grazing as if nothing had happened. The tale spread like wildfire through Yakutia, then beyond, the 90-year-old woman who faced 1,000 wolves at -71 degrees in Wuhan. Scientists would later estimate the pack at around 200, exaggerated by fear and legend, but to Olga, it felt like 1,000. She lived another 5 years, passing her knowledge to grandchildren, her story a testament to human resilience in the face of nature's wrath. But the story doesn't end with that night, it's woven into the fabric of Yakut life, a narrative that explains not just Olga's survival but the spirit of all who endure in that frozen realm. Every Yakut knows the cold isn't just weather, it's a teacher, an adversary, a companion. Olga's battle was against more than wolves, it was against isolation, age, and the indifference of the universe. In the years following, her Izba became a pilgrimage site, young herders seeking her advice on everything from sheep breeding to warding off evil spirits. She taught them to respect the wolves, not as enemies, but as part of the balance. They hunger as we do, she'd say, her voice cracked but strong. But we have fire in our souls. The sheep, those snow-white survivors, thrived under her care, their wool spun into garments that warmed families across the region. Buren, the hero dog, sired a line of pups that became legendary guardians. Olga's wound healed into a scar she wore like a badge, a reminder that pain is transient, but victory eternal. As she aged further, her stories grew, embellished by tellers, but the core remained, one woman's stand against impossible odds. In Yakutia, survival isn't solitary, it's communal, passed down through generations. Olga's tale inspired songs sung around campfires, dances performed at festivals, even modern films that captured the essence, if not the exact truth. It explained why Yakuts build their homes with thick walls, why they keep dogs close, why they never venture out without a plan. Every child's bedtime story included elements of her fight, the flames, the howls, the unyielding will. It taught that age is no barrier to heroism, that a single person can defy a multitude. Beyond the personal, the story illuminated broader truths about human existence in extreme environments. Climate scientists studied Yakutia as a harbinger of global changes, but locals like Olga embodied adaptation. Her methods, using oil fires, noise deterrence, ancestral chants, were rooted in indigenous knowledge, a blend of practicality and spirituality. Shamans invoked her name in rituals, seeing her as a bridge between worlds. Tourists, drawn by the legend, visited, bringing economic sparks to remote villages, but Olga shunned fame, preferring her quiet life. The wolves, too, had their place in the narrative. Not villains, but symbols of wild freedom, their defeat a temporary truce. Ecologists noted how such encounters highlighted the delicate ecosystem balance, where human expansion and climate shifts pushed wildlife into conflict. Olga's story explained the need for coexistence, for protected corridors where wolves could roam without threat. As Olga's final days approached, she gathered her family, recounting the night in vivid detail, ensuring the story lived on. "It wasn't me alone," she'd whisper. "It was the land, the sheep, Buren, the spirits watched over us." Her passing was peaceful, under the same aurora that had witnessed her birth. The flock was divided among heirs, each sheep a living chapter. Today, in Yakutia, when blizzards howl and wolves prowl, people remember Olga. Her story explains resilience, the human capacity to face darkness and emerge. It's everyone's story, the herder, the elder, the child, woven into 3,000 words of triumph, a beacon in the cold. The details vary with each telling. Was it truly 1,000 wolves, or the illusion of fear? Did the fire burn all night, or was it her spirit that blazed? But the essence endures. In the heart of winter's grip, one woman saved her world, proving that survival is the ultimate tale.